Welcome to Block 11 of our Block of the Month 2022. This month's video is for one of the 16-inch blocks in the quilt and the 4 corners in the optional pieced border. This block needs 4 fabrics, a background, a light, a medium, and a dark. A downloadable version of this pattern can be found in the Files section of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends, or you can screenshot it to print it at home or push pause and take notes. We will show the pattern again at the end of the video. The pattern for the corners will be in the middle of the video right before we do that section. But for now, it's time to cut the fabric. From the background fabric, cut 2 squares 5 1/4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, 12 squares that are 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches, and 4 squares that are 3 inches by 3 inches. From the light fabric, cut 4 squares that are 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches, and 4 squares 3 inches by 3 inches. From the medium fabric, cut 8 squares 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches, 4 squares 3 inches by 3 inches, and 1 square 4 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. From the dark fabric, cut 2 squares 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inches, 4 squares 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches, 4 squares 3 inches by 3 inches, and 4 rectangles 2 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. I've also cut out my pieces for my red, white, and blue version and my version that has the bright colors on the black background. Place the light 3-inch squares on top of the dark 3-inch squares with right sides together. Now you can either draw a line from corner to corner and then sew a 1/4 inch on either side of it, or you can use the diagonal seam tape to accomplish the same goal. After you've sewn the seam on both sides of that line, cut them apart, and you can do this either with a pair of scissors or you can take it over to your cutting board and use your rotary cutter and your mat. Once you've cut them apart, you will have 8 half-square triangles. You want to take these to the ironing board and press them to the dark fabric. Once they are pressed, trim each of them to 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches. I like to use my black lock ruler to help me trim them accurately. Next, we're going to do the same thing with the 3-inch background squares and the 3-inch medium squares. Make 8 half-square triangle blocks that you will trim to 2 1/2 inches by 2 1/2 inches. If you're enjoying our video and want to see more like this one, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. Place the 5 1/4 inch background square onto the dark 5 1/4 inch square with the right sides together. Sew a 1/4 inch away from the corner to corner line on both sides of the line. Cut on the line and then press towards the medium fabric. Once they are pressed, cut in half corner to corner, cutting perpendicular to the seam. Mix them up to piece them back together to make X blocks. Piece these units together using 1/4 inch seam allowances and press. After these blocks are pressed, you can trim them to 4 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. Next, we need to make 4 flying geese units using the 4 2 1/2 inch by 4 1/2 inch dark rectangles and the 8 background 2 1/2 inch by 2 1/2 inch squares. Place a square on one end of the rectangle and sew on the line. Trim the seam to 1/4 inch and press towards the triangle. I like to sew an extra seam 1/2 inch away from the first one so that when I trim the seam down, I don't throw away that extra little half square triangle unit. I can save that for another project. Once you're done pressing towards the triangle, you can repeat this process on the other end with the other 4 squares of the background fabric. After we get through making the block, I will show you the steps for the pieced corner for the optional pieced borders, so keep watching all the way through to the end of the video. Once we're done pressing the flying geese, we'll have all the pieces we need to start assembling the block. I also have my pieces ready for my red, white, and blue version and my bright colors on a black background version. These blocks are going to be stunning. Combine the X block units and the flying geese units to make 4 of these center units. When you're pressing these, you want to press towards the X block. Next, we're going to use all the 2.5 inch squares, the half square triangle units that you just made, and the squares that we cut to make the corner squares. These are piles of 4 squares, and you will be making 3 different rows, 4 of each. As you sew these rows together, keep double checking your pieces. Make sure that you don't twist them around the wrong way. We want to keep the seam ripper in the drawer where it belongs. I hope you've had some time to check out the bonus block of the month videos. Those are where I'm putting the instructions for the borders that are pieced if you want to add those to your quilt. And also this video at the end of it will have the pieces that you would need to make for the corners of the quilt. I started the borders for the quilt a little bit early so that when we finish the last block 12 in the month of December, if that's when you're playing along with us, you won't have to make all of the borders that month. We know that that's a busy time for people, so we wanted to kind of work ahead so that you could even possibly enjoy this quilt in time for Christmas. Once you have all the rows sewn together, you need to press these rows. You're going to press towards the squares that aren't half square triangles, so all the plain blocks. If pressed correctly, when you start sewing these rows together, the seams will just nest together and you won't even need to pin them because they will go together quite easily. Piece the rows together. Make sure you have them flipped the correct way and double check often. Once all the rows are sewed together, then you just need to take it to the ironing board and press all the seams in one direction. Now you have 4 of these corner units to go with your 4 center units. Add these pieces with the 4.5 inch square out of the medium fabric to make 2 different rows. You're going to have 2 of the top row and 1 of the center row. Once you have the 3 rows sewn together, you're going to press away from the center units. Piece these 3 rows together to make a block that will measure 16.5 inches by 16.5 inches. When you're done sewing, you want to press the block so it lays nice and flat, and I pressed away from the center unit. I think this block turned out fantastic. I really like how it seems to radiate out from the center into those star points on the corners. I think it looks gorgeous. I can't believe we're already on block 11, but here we are, block 11. So I also made my red, white, and blue version, and I made my version that has the black background with the bright colors. Now it's time to piece the corners. Here's the pattern for the corners, and just like the other patterns, it's available on our Facebook page, but also we'll have it at the end of the video. We're going to start with the cutting, and what we need to do is cut 2 strips 2.5 inches by the width of fabric of the outer border fabric. From the extra accent fabric, you need to cut 1 strip that's 2.5 inches by half of the width of fabric, so about 22 inches. From a medium fabric, you need to cut 1 strip that's 2.5 inches by the width of fabric. From a dark fabric, you need to cut 1 strip that's 2.5 inches by half of the width of fabric, so about 22 inches. Start by piecing the medium fabric that's 2.5 inches wide by the width of fabric to one of the outer border strips of the same length. Cut the remaining outer border strip in half and piece 1/2 to the extra accent fabric and the other half to the dark fabric. Press all of these pieces away from the outer border fabric or towards the medium or the dark fabric. Subcut all of these strip sets into sections that are 2.5 inches wide. I like to layer mine so I can make fewer cuts, so I will layer these on top of each other and make all the cuts at once. If you're going to stack them and cut them all at once like this, it's really important to measure twice, cut once. I also will use my larger ruler so that I can cut on the 12.5 inch and then the 10 and then the 7.5, the 5 and the 2.5. It's less movement on the fabric and you move the ruler more so that you get better accurate cuts. Once all the strip sets are cut up, it's time to arrange them into rows. Position the pieces so the medium fabric creates a diagonal line across the middle of the block. The extra accent fabric will be on one side and the dark fabric will be on the other. Sew these rows together using 1/4 inch seam allowances. You'll want to press these rows before you start sewing the rows together, and you're going to press away from the outer border fabric. If you press these correctly when you go to sew the rows together, all of the seams will nest together. Sew these sections together in sets of 2, and then sew those sets of 2 together to make the block that will be 8.5 inches by 8.5 inches. If you wanted to, you could press right now, but I like to just wait and press at the very end, and then I'm going to press all my seams in one direction. And I've also been working on my other 2 colorways. For the red, white, and blue version, I just did red and blue in the corners. I didn't pick any 4 particular fabrics. I kind of just did a little bit of mixing and matching out of leftover pieces, just like I did for the border prints. And then for the bright colors on a black background, I just did 2 fabrics. We hope that you remembered to hit the like button, leave us a comment about the quilt, share with your quilting friends so that everyone can play along, and most importantly, subscribe so that you don't miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!